People who have reached a 9 or 10 on the pain scale. What happened? Ruptured large intestine. Morphine helped a lot. Trigeminal neuralgia. It feels like every bone and tooth in my face has been crushed and shattered. I've got a high pain tolerance from a lifetime of nerve damage from scoliosis, but TN pain had me truly wishing for the relief of death. Absolutely nothing gave me any relief whatsoever, and I was begging to just be sedated. Ovarian cyst burst. Tried to give birth vaginally, and after hours of labor and hours of pushing, something felt horribly wrong. Then it felt like the worst pain imaginable. Ended up having an emergency C-section, but something went wrong with the drugs and I could feel the incision. My uterus had literally burst. After closing, the doctor was checking to make sure my uterus was solid and it had multiple other tears. I almost bled out. The doctor cried, telling my boyfriend what had happened. Molar infection. The pain was so intense I had to control myself to just not curl in a ball and cry. I had to take antibiotics for a week and then extract the tooth. It's like the most intense nerve pain ever, but it doesn't stop. No thinking, no sleeping, only the pain. Now I say I no longer am afraid of death, since death can be a release from pain. LOL. Bacterial meningitis. My brain felt like a contained explosion that was trapped reverberating in my skull, but it wanted out, and constantly let me know about it. I have thankfully been exceedingly lucky in not gravely injuring myself. However, the most egregious amount of pain I've ever been in was getting stung by a stingray. Wasn't paying attention and moving quickly through shallow ocean and felt a slice. I thought I'd stepped on glass, but by the time I got out of the water the pain was so intense I couldn't even think. Felt like someone put my foot in a blender. I got treated quickly and thankfully did not go through the peak of it. For future reference, submerge affected area in the hottest water you can stand without burning yourself. Fractured my hip and had to keep rucking 12 miles with 65 pounds on my back. I bawled my eyes out the whole time and another person was lifting the back of my ruck up to help take the weight off, but it is still the most painful thing I've ever experienced. Perforated colon with sepsis. Worst pain I ever felt. I have a brain disease, so I've been a 9 or 10 a few times in my life. It's the worst pain ever, but it went away after a bit because I went essentially comatose every time after a little bit. Ovarian torsion that lasted 3 days. Also, CSF leak after a spinal tap. Toothache closely followed by kidney stones. Pancreatitis. Hit by a car, leg got pinned in front of the wheel and it basically ate away my ankle. First sobering moment in my life when I picked up my leg and my ankle went at a 90-degree angle. I was 9 at the time and knew I had fucked up big time. 11 surgeries, 2 months in the hospital, 8 months bed rest later, I can say I still have my of it. Kidney stones. Filling fell off my tooth and the live nerve was exposed. I couldn't even drink water. Worst pain I've ever experienced, worse than appendix bursting, chipped bones, torn ligaments, sprains, the whole thing. LOL. Chronic migraines. A bursted ovarian cyst. Sleeping and both my legs spazzed out at the same time. Like the entire leg. Calf, quads, hamstrings, feet, tendons, everything. Lasted like 20 minutes straight, and it's probably nothing compared to some of these things under the comment, but the best way I could describe it is it was like my body just randomly decided to tear off my legs muscle one by one, piece by piece, little by little, and for no reason. Proper benzo alcohol opiate withdrawal. It's multifaceted. Not only are you in excruciating physical pain, but also the absolute worst mental emotional pain. I suffer from cluster headache. The first time I experienced it I literally thought my head would explode and that I would go blind, because the pain I felt inside my eye was inexplicable. 2 herniated discs. Miscarried, blood clot blocked my cervix, I was in agony. They gave me 10 milligrams of morphine until the pain subsided enough for me to go home. Meningitis. I just passed out. Ripped off a fingernail while farming. Pulled the hand off the ground and it made a 90-degree angle from the base. Mizite and mind came and went for like 10 minutes as if to pass out, and my whole hand was throbbing. My gallbladder was necrotic due to gallstones, and I went into sepsis. Felt like a balloon kept expanding and getting bigger under the right side of my ribs to the point of popping. My wife said I was screaming for my mother, who had died 7 years earlier at the time. Went through it for 4 days before I decided to go to the hospital. Doctor said if I had waited 2 more days I probably would have died. They told me it was normal for women. My organs are gluing themselves together. 1 in 10 women experience this. Endometriosis is a bitch. Fuck adenomyosis too. These ruin our lives, and the medical field really doesn't give one, let alone 2 shits. Got an IUD. Multiple gallstones. Hysterosalpinography test aka HSG test. Initial tests to see if my uterus and/or fallopian tubes were okay to have a baby since my husband, and I had been trying for a year without anything. Contrast dye sent straight up the uterus tubes, and then the cramping started happening. Enough to have me curl into a little ball on the exam table and cry. I have no idea how women give birth. And this is coming from a girl who gets demobilizing migraines with nausea. Penile foreskin got stuck in my pant zipper. I was about 5 years old and had forgot to wear my underwear beneath. After taking a quick piss, I zipped up in a rush, not putting my penis inside fully. Outcome was the most painful pain I have ever experienced. The worst part was when I was taken to the hospital. No anesthesia was given and doctor simply pulled that shit out of the zipper with brute force. Took a flight with a blocked nose. 1 had a baby, 2 had gallstone pain attacks that ended up with me being septic and needing emergency surgery, 3 pancreatitis, needing hospitalization. All within 12 months. Also within that period I had mastitis 8 times, the 3rd time I was hospitalized because I was septic. It was a fucker of a year. VP shunt failure. I was out surfing and the longboard hit me on the back of the head after I bailed and broke the VP shunt that drained spinal fluid from my brain. A few days after that it felt like I just had an ordinary headache, but after a few days at home in bed as it got worse and worse I was finally taken to hospital as my brain was probably going to explode if they didn't fix it and the spinal fluid had kept building in my brain. The worst part is I now panic a little every time I get a mini headache because I'm never sure if I'm just dehydrated or about to have my head explode. Male, in my 30s. Young and inexperienced female nurse had to insert a Foley catheter in me while I'm fully awake. My manhood couldn't take it, both anatomic and figurative, and little Robbie was waffling from a reactive boner to turtle head shrinkage and retraction. I was biting the bed rail. I got 2-3 if you're looking for emotional car accident at 16, seatbelt saved my life but collapsed my left lung. I wouldn't wish that pain on my worst enemy. On deployment I got stung by a scorpion in my left nut. YA. The 3rd was watching my son fall into a fire pit and then pulling him out. He was 2 and without a shadow of a doubt the most painful thing I've ever endured. Every day I look at his little arm and punch myself in the face for not being a better dad. I got slammed so hard I fractured my floater rib. And my L5 for slipped immediately. Now my back hurts for life LOL. Also adult tonsillectomy was rough. An adult circumcision. I had a blood clot in my brain and it literally felt like my head was going to explode. Numerous gallstones that I'd ignored for months fused into one massive stone that was slamming against my bile ducts. That was brutal, but even worse was when one of the bile ducts was blocked by a stone that had worked its way into the duct.